Steve Wheeler. I live in Plymouth. I'm an academic involved in psychology and education.
When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Well, I like to write. I write poetry, I write short stories, I do all that kind of stuff.
What does success mean to you?
Success means being happy, but also making other people happy, I think.
What are your top 5 educational technologies?
Oh, it has to be a smartphone, obviously Twitter, Facebook, also probably my laptop, and one more, let me think, one more, probably something in the classroom, like an interactive whiteboard.
What are your first or favorite educational or teaching strategies?
It's got to be, for me, Socratic, where it's all about questioning and dialogue. And I think I subscribe mainly to a social constructivist philosophy where everyone makes their own meaning.
Which is the evaluation method you use the most during your education career?
I like to get students to self-assess and to assess each other. I like a bit of peer assessment with me kind of filling in the gaps.
What is your favorite social media?
Favorite social media, I think, has to be Twitter.
And what was your most memorable tweet, if you can remember?
My most memorable tweet, it's one that people often requote, and I don't know where I came up with it, but I said to them, I said simply, knowledge is like love. You can give it away all you like, but you still get to keep it.
And your favorite blog?
My favorite blog, I have several. How do I choose? I guess one of my favorite ones is David Hopkins' Don't Waste Your Time, which is a really great educational technology blog. It's a British blog.
What would be your first advice to anybody who would be keen on going into a teaching career?
Be honest with yourself and don't burn out. Do you know what my first Eden memory was? My first overseas trip to speak. I'd been speaking in the UK, but I went to Poitiers in France in 1996, if I remember rightly, the Palais de Congrès, which was, I shared a stage with Sally Reynolds and Julie Salmon. And I went home on the train with, went back to Paris on the TG, the TGV with Uli Benath. And these were people that I met for the first time, and I didn't know any of them, and they didn't know me. But that was in 1996, and it was an amazing event because I met so many people who were doing very similar things to me, and I didn't know that many people existed in that kind of research area of educational technology and distance ed. And I was quite new to the scene at the time, but because of that, that kind of launched my career, and that was one of about 20 Eden conferences that I've been to now. Do you know what I like about Eden above, and I say this without prejudice, there are so many associations I've belonged to, I've chaired several as well, but Eden is special because it has a universal appeal. There are people that are members from all over the world, not just Europe, so it's not just Eurocentric, it's a universal kind of remit, I think. It's got a wide-ranging set of remits and responsibilities. And I think that Eden is probably the broadest church in terms of the amount of people that it includes out of any of the associations I've been involved in over the years.
This is the Eden community. And what do you think that Eden can do for this community? Also, or what do you think it was done the best in the past? And what do you see that it's going to be in the future for Eden to have a place?
Two words for me: inform and challenge. Those two words, if you can inform people and challenge people at the same time, I think they will think for themselves and they will learn for themselves. And that's what Eden, I think, does best: inform and challenge. I think that education, it has to be free at the point of delivery. And I don't just mean compulsory education. I think that education should be freely available to all. Knowledge should be freely available to all.
What do you think is going to be the most important development in the next years?
But the biggest problem of all is not the amount of time we spend online, but what we do while we're online. And I think that teachers who are not used to online education tend to think that learning happens only when you're online together. It doesn't. It happens offline as well. And I think teachers ought to understand, and they need to be educated, that what we're doing here, for instance, is face-to-face at a distance kind of dialogue that happens through the technology, mediation, is only the first step. It's a trigger. It's a kind of a window into the next stage of learning, which can be working away offline and then coming back and discussing online again. I think it's got to be a blended, mixed, hybrid type of education we look at now. And I think that is going to impact upon the future of education when all this pandemic stuff is over. I think Eden is in a very, very important position because it's looked up to by a lot of organizations. I think most other distance education organizations around the world, and you can name the ICD, the whole lot, they all respect Eden and its leadership. It's constantly churning its leadership. It's constantly renewing its leadership. There's a new president every 3 years, and there are new members on the NAP team every 3 years, and so on every 6 years. So I think that it's constant state of renewal, and it's constant ability and knack, if you like, of spotting trends quite early through observatories and other mechanisms like that. I think is going to stand it in good stead in the future. I think we're going to rely less on face-to-face meetings now. We're going to have a mixed environment there as well, between online and face-to-face, like we are with most conferences these days. Recently, myself and a few colleagues, we involved ourselves in a special issue of Research and Teaching in Higher Education, which looked at artificial intelligence and its applications to education. And we were both amazed and appalled at the lack of people actually willing to write about artificial intelligence and its latest developments. So somewhere like Eden can actually bring that out into a more informal way of discussion. Going to a journal, writing for a journal is very formalized. It's peer reviewed, it's rigorously checked and so on. And there are lots of hoops to jump through. Whereas somewhere like Eden, you can rock up with a paper that's fairly embryonic with lots of questions in it and very few answers, and you can present it to your audience and you'll get some amazing feedback, whether it's online or face-to-face, and you'll get some really considered responses from people who are really expert in the field. And that to me is gold dust for any young researcher. We are one community. We have one aim in mind, and that is to better education for the world. Whatever way we do that through, whether it's through face-to-face, whether it's through online, whether it's through hybrid or blended or whatever you want to call it. And we're all in this together, so let's continue to come together as an informal grouping that is known as Eden, and all of its benefits and all of its attractions that go with that interaction and discourse. And let's really make it count. That's what I see as my vision for the future of Eden.
In one word, what do you want for 2021?
Freedom.